Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hereby call to order the Ithaca Landmarks Preservation Commission, June 17, 2025. This meeting is being held in Common Council Chambers in City Hall, 108 East Green Street, and virtually using video conferencing technology. Virtual participation in public meetings is authorized by Part WW of Chapter 56 of the laws of 2022 of New York State and Local Law 2022-05. The Commission Charter, Ithaca Landmarks Ordinance, and the Commission's own rules and procedure. Commission comprises 7 members nominated by the mayor and approved by Common Council. Should we introduce ourselves? We will begin by introducing members, and then we will start over here. Caitlin.
David Crane.
Stephen Gideon, member.
Brian McCracken, Historic Preservation and Neighborhood Planner for the city.
Okay, before the ends, I need to go over the emergency situation. In case of an emergency evacuation, you are to take one of the 2 exits there and behind us here at both ends of the meeting room, and and first responders will arrive to aid you. In the event of other emergencies, you will be notified and offer help when it is not to your own detriment. Old business, in that we've discussed this previously and our continuing discussion, and that would be 110 Trip Hammer Road, Cornell Heights Historic District, proposal to construct large and reconfigure the driveway. Oh.
I'm Zach Fox, architectural designer, and I also have a house in Pittsburgh.
Zach, real quick, can you push the button on the microphone and it'll light up green? Good.
I'm Seth. I'm just a landscaper. Seth is the wall specialist. So you've seen this plan before. We made some updates and changes. The carport actually got smaller. We were about 3 feet from the property line. We've moved that to be 5 feet, working with Megan Wilson. And she said at a staff level, they could approve the 5-foot setback for the carport. The driveway also got smaller. We were proposing a 15-foot drive lane, I guess, around the roundabout. We reduced it to 12. We've also reintroduced some plantings, some buffer plantings along the roadway, and some plantings within the median to help screen the cars in the driveway. We've also reintroduced this stone patio. There's sort of an existing stone patio at the entrance, and we're expanding it and creating sort of a drop-off area. Page 2 is a rendering, kind of a sketch rendering showing the driveway with the median and plantings, the carport, and how the carport's an extension from the house, utilizing the same sort of roof line pitch and exposed rafter tails. The posts are illustrated maybe a little small. They're 8x8 posts in the specification. And the retaining wall is a unilock paver system. And submit a spec for that, but we have It's the River Crest Wall Stone System. It's an irregular pattern stone, but it's a concrete unilock paver. It's irregular and the color would be coastal slate. Kind of a gray, kind of look like blue stone. And specifications haven't really changed. Aside from the setback and some adjustments of the structure itself.
Brian, do you know I'm not sure if it's the original or the addition of the one-story bump out that this do we know when that was added?
Based on the symmetry of the facade, I think it was an original part of the building. I don't think it was an addition.
Okay, thank you. I was glad to see it wasn't completely paved, so that's a huge improvement, so thumbs up on that one. Could you explain a little bit of more about the concept drawing suggests that there's some kind of framing that's happening around the planted green space or the lawn or whatever it turns out to be. We don't have purview over the green space per se, but we do on the hardscape. Could you explain, in the rendering, it looks like it's thicker than the drawing seems to me to be. So I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind clarifying that.
Right. This is a photograph sketch overlay, so it's not a three-dimensional model to scale. So it might be illustrated a little differently. The edging around the driveway is proposed as stone in the drawing. Or a unit paver, a unilock
Typically,
paver.
what's used in driveways is like what's called a building block. It's just granite.
Okay.
That's typically what's used in driveways around here. Everyone has.
Mhm.
My driveway's lined with that,
Yeah.
actually, the Belgian block. Yeah.
So that's around the exterior. Is that what you plan to also use for lighting the interior green space as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
What's the size of these concrete pieces that would be making up the retaining wall? Are they
They're random sizes.
random sizes?
There's like 4 or 5 random sizes to make it look more irregular.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to get up there since the last meeting, but I recall there was quite a pretty good drop off in grade between the current driveway and the lawn in front of the house.
Yes.
How are you gonna handle that? Are you gonna raise the driveway up to the level of the current driveway or lower the current driveway? How's that gonna be handled?
Well, I think where it says buffer plantings would become a low point and probably needs to be graded out as a low point to shed the water. But yeah, the driveway would be probably sloping down a little bit and then back up to make up that grade as you go around the turnaround. And that center area would probably be filled to be flushed.
Yep.
Be flush with the driveway.
And on the section of the carport itself, it's showing just sort of square cut rafter tail detail. I believe the existing rafter tails have some kind of curved tail detail, don't they?
No, actually, this is to match the existing. Yeah, just a square cut.
Well, Zach, first of all, hi.
Hi.
Uh, You probably knew that we were just gonna question how much of this yard is gonna be taken up by driveway. It's just really a lot of driveway.
Okay, so I've been working with Megan Higgins on that, or Megan Wilson. And we actually reduced it to be within the 25% of the front lawn area. So it doesn't require a variance. if that helps.
You've got buffer plantings indicated on the kind of about even with the left side in the front with the left side of the house. Is there any reason you don't want to screen the more of it?
We had them carried around to the front, and I think the owner is worried about visibility. This curve is really dangerous. And I think that's the reason to create this turnaround.
Yeah, if you've never tried to back out of that driveway, give it a shot.
Very difficult.
So would you describe how cars would negotiate this? So I guess there might be one car parked in the carport
Correct.
and the next car where would the next car park?
Currently, sort of how that works is, well, it's in tandem. 2 cars back to back, I guess. There could be a car parked kind of where it says existing plantings in the middle of the driveway. So there's enough room for a car to back out and turn around. Potentially a car would be sitting in front of the house.
On top of the patio?
Drop off more like an executive parking area.
Mostly the family has drivers and the children live in the house, so they pick up the kids and drop them off at school and downtown and activities.
Where do the drivers live?
In the house, they have a room. Yeah.
I guess what I'm getting at is it might be attractive of a nice curved driveway, but if there's 3 or 4 or 5 cars parked on it, then that's what you really see are the cars themselves. Stretch limos, I don't know what they are.
No.
Suburbans. Actually, it's usually one Suburban and maybe a guest car. Yeah, I think their main concern is really backing out of the driveway.
All right, so just go on to the description. So there's one car in the carport, and the next one's parked where it says 14 feet. And then how do the car, how do they negotiate their way in and out? Or is there, if there's one parked in front of the house, then you can't go that way to get around to get out. So then you back, that last thing you described there, might be 3 or 4 cars parked here.
Okay.
Potentially come up with the works from maneuvering in and out.
I know for the last 2 years, there's been 2 cars. On occasion, the family comes up and things like that. So changes. Typically 2 cars. And how it's negotiated. I haven't thought too much about it. This is direction from the client, and I guess you could reverse into the carport. And then so you pull straight out into the turnaround. That would be one way to do it. It's a good question.
Well, I mean, I think that from a purely design standpoint, I don't really have much of an issue with it. I think it becomes to the functional use of what we're creating. And what I think the concern would be is that we're creating 5 parking spaces in a front yard in a historic property in the district. I think that's where the rubber really hits the road in this case. Is that what you're concerned about?
Yeah, again, it was described last week. They have 4 cars for the people who live there. So now it becomes cars in the front yard.
Right.
So let me just interrupt here. In all honesty, I've never seen more than one white minivan in the driveway, unless the driver is there with the Escalade. Then there's 2, and putting 2 cars in that driveway in that configuration is easy. You're not going to have 5 cars in the driveway. You're not going to create an eyesore. If that's what we're worried about.
Well, I think that, I mean, there have been other properties who would like to have a bunch, rental properties who want to have a bunch of parking in their front yard. And we have historically been opposed to turning the front yard. Because if you think about how valuable parking is, right? Like if you create it for one, right, you're creating parking spaces once you establish that precedent. I mean, I think there's you know, I think there's an argument to this, that there's some mitigating factors in terms of, you know, this is, and this, I did not pull into the property, but negotiating it, I do see as being rather challenging. So I'm not opposed to finding an alternative. I also much prefer having the planting section existing there, which, you know, that can't be hardscape. That has to be, I know we can't control the plantings themselves, but we can pretend we can stipulate that it's not hardscape. I think there are some mitigating factors, but I think we have to be able to affirmatively say that there are not reasonable alternatives that can be located elsewhere. From the landscaping standpoint, I see this as being largely reversible for the historic house. The question is whether or not it fits in with the character of the neighborhood. And then we need to talk about the carport and whether or not it integrates with the existing architecture appropriately.
Neighborhood sororities with parking lots everywhere, so.
Right, but but see, that's the problem, is we can't use necessarily what's existed because those parking lots aren't historic, so that's not what we turn to for guidance. So that's just, yeah.
You said compared to the rest of the neighborhood, so like.
right, no, and
You can't
again,
really do that. You can't judge that on the rest of the neighborhood.
well, when I say that, I'm sorry, I should have said compared to the rest of the district.
Okay. That's fair.
You know, turning to the other, so that's, I just want to be very clear what,
Yeah,
at
no.
least the lens I'm looking through it for. But I do appreciate it is a neighborhood that has a lot of that type of use.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not,
And
Maybe.
currently, if there are 4 cars at the house, they all pull into the driveway. There's no on-street parking anywhere
right,
within blocks.
yeah,
I would add that in the past, the ILPC has actually resisted parking in the backyard, paving backyards for parking. So, let alone front yards.
Want to put paving in the backyard for parking?
No,
Okay.
so we have
Okay.
we have expectations for parking in the backyard, and
Then I guess this turnaround isn't proposed as parking, it's proposed as a turnaround to get out safely.
yeah, although in the definition in the zoning regulations, it defines maneuvering space as parking space, I believe.
Interesting.
It's been months since I looked into it, but.
Just the purpose that the client
Or
proposed.
Maneuvering is parking.
Right, do we need to open this to the public again?
We need to open this to the public. We had the public hearing at last month's meeting.
Just one thing that is concerning me, and that is even if the current owners only have 1 or at most 2 vehicles, the next owners could have 5 vehicles. I mean, it could just be used as a parking lot. And I'm not happy about that. I mean, there's no way to restrict parking to a future owner, I don't think. But the possibility, the sort of obvious possibility, is that this becomes a group house and then there are 5 cars there.
Well, I was noticing with, from the distance, the difference from last month was that the plantings have been re-added to this, and they were pretty much taken out before. So having a rail, having a block around and having plantings in there, I think that's gonna help prevent this total front yard parking issue. And, you know, maybe,
It's in the center would also prevent.
so.
The client was really pushing for the entire area to be gravel. And I didn't realize they took the plantings out because I drew the plantings in.
But if the plantings are there and we're having that kind of a wall around it, then to me, it makes it more acceptable than it would have otherwise.
Very nice.
So we do have to be careful about not attempting to regulate use because that does fall out of our purview. So I don't know how many spaces are currently allowed here. But what we should be sticking to is the features of the drive, not necessarily how the drive is going to be used. And that, you know, the paved space does open up an opportunity for additional parking. But that is something that's regulated on the zoning side, not on the historic character side. So I think that there's been a lot of really great discussion about how this is different proposals for parking in historic districts. So, yeah.
And we can just say that and when we read the resolution, that, judged on the siting of this property, the type of road that's there, the egress and entrance to this property, this might make sense.
Yes. And we don't typically regulate landscape, but if it's required as a mitigation for a proposal, we can require it as screening. We can, so, while we can't say what plants to use, we can say that vegetation is needed to mitigate the impacts of this proposal. So there is that opportunity there.
My recommendation would actually be to build up that border of the wall or of the interior planting area and make it higher so that it doesn't become a parking place. I mean, if
I like your attitude.
I'm enjoying having somebody who says something nice and it's that table.
You're talking about building another wall, that just means more money for me.
Oh.
Well, I mean, I think requiring that to be actually a defined planting area will significantly inhibit its likelihood of being removed either by the current property owner or by a future property owner. And that definitively creates a green space, whether it has whatever we can stipulate for that component. It becomes a yeah. Look like it's totally big. Right, because I think.
Mhm.
And so, reducing, like you said, visual impact, that would. And it gets you some more.
I do have a retaining wall in my driveway and someone hit it the other day and it's now a crumbled wall that I need to rebuild. So I'm gonna tap into Seth.
You know someone. So.
Yeah. So if we were to do a wall, I mean, maybe it's a 3-foot setback or something, just in case someone kind of nips it.
So we're also looking at a carport and a retaining wall as part of this resolution. How do commission members feel about the carport?
I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I personally like the design. I think it looks really natural and yeah, kind of goes well with like the angles of the house. But like, I know, did you ask about like the timing of when that side area might have been like built on the house? I don't know what you're.
Well, I did,
Right.
but Brian thinks that it's probably original to the property, so, I mean,
Yeah.
that's. I would trust that assessment on that, so I'm not, I mean, it makes, if it's even if it was an addition, I'm sure it would be grandfathered in into, as a considered a character defining feature. I think it's I personally agree with you, I think it's a relatively low impact, I think it could be fairly easily reversed if someone wanted to. Because of the attachment is right at the roof line is where it's largely. Yeah, I mean, I think that could be restored without really impairment to the existing walls. I do want to make sure we talk about the 3-foot setback, because 3-foot setbacks. That's that.
Knee wall.
Well, you probably want something low enough that you can open your car door over top of it.
And so a granite cobble curb wouldn't be sufficient enough.
I would.
Well, on that place that comes off of Buffalo Street, remember there was the 18-inch retaining wall and people couldn't open their car doors, so they could park even further away from it. And I don't think you want to get into that situation.
So whose car door? Like,
Um,
like a Miata or an Escalade, like.
The,
Okay.
but I think that stone separating the driveway from the surrounding areas, I think that a building is required by code. There should be some kind of the border. So that
Mhm.
I think that landscape entry patio to be expanded, and restored. You'll note that it showed up in this early survey, but then it somehow disappeared between then and now. Stone over. So I think the restoration of that entry patio is a good move. And so the combination of the borders and the patio are two improvements from last month's proposal, as well as reducing the size of the paved area. It's into the roof line nicely and balanced.
I did confirm with Megan Wilson that the driveway proposal and the carport proposal are in her opinion, zoning compliant. So if that's helpful to the commission. I also think it would be helpful if you describe how the granite sets are going to be installed. Like is there a concrete base that they're set on? And also how tall that curb is, because there's a very big difference between a 1-inch curb and a 4-inch curb. So maybe some description of that, which might help people understand how cars would be restricted from going into areas that aren't intended for parking.
I have Belgian block border on my driveway on Clinton Street. And they're set, yeah, they're massive stones and they're about 6 to
You
8
got big
inches
ones.
tall. They're tall, yeah. And so we're about 5 inches out of the ground and a few inches buried.
You can set them up soldier course and they can be, if they're 16-inch or a foot, they can be 6 inches, 8 inches above.
I question the front yard setback and this subsequent calculation of the area of the front yard. Is it not a 25-foot front yard setback?
This is based on Megan Wilson's calculations. So she actually considered the entire street frontage.
And from.
So it'd be from the corner of the building to the street. I think it was 33 feet. And then it would be that 33 feet for the entire road frontage.
So she's calculated as the existing front yard between the house and the property.
You can see, yeah, this dash
Yeah, the
line.
required front yard, which is only 25 feet deep.
Yeah, that's a building setback, but the yard area setback is maybe different.
Because one's the required minimum setback and one, I guess, is
Yes.
the
Yep. that's
existing.
How you calculate
setback.
it.
So it's a different definition of front yard.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Are we ready to read the resolution? That would be,
Have we approved a uniblock retaining wall in the past, or we actually required natural stone?
We have approved Uniblock or Versa Block. It's another brand name for other properties in the Cornell Heights Historic District. Around the corner on Wade Ave. Most of the retaining walls that were built as part of the Cornell Bridges properties are all this or similar material.
Places.
You know, there's some are attractive, especially I guess if they're random. Others, if they're just coursed and look like concrete. They're not attractive.
Right.
I think we don't have a sample of the material or
Catalog here, I can show you.
yeah, a catalog would be helpful. My recommendation would be to add a condition that the particular product is approved at the staff level.
And I just want to say one more thing about carports. Carports are very nice when they're all open, but when they start getting garbage cans and rakes and lawnmowers and bags of sand and salt and other things stored, and then suddenly they're not so attractive anymore.
That's valid.
There's a garage.
Very true. Would you approve an enclosure with a garage door?
That is
Just wondering.
That is a different proposal.
I would approve of it, maybe partially enclosed. And sometimes carports have closets on one wall or storage.
Right.
It is coastal slate option.
Now, those don't look random, those look sort of coursed.
It's more like what would be era specific or era approved, like the stacked walls, so. Thank you.
Are we ready? Commission members.
In this property about why we're allowing certain things. So.
If we did.
We were proposing a curb at 6 inches. Like Seth said, it could be up to 8 inches.
Yeah, Belgian block comes in different sizes. Typically, they're 8 or 12 inches long, 4 inches deep. So you can set them up soldier course, so they're standing upright, and they can be as long as they're 2 inches in the ground, preferably set in concrete.
Yeah,
So if somebody hits it, it's not
yeah,
gonna.
needs to be set in concrete.
Is that defined in the drawings that you presented, or is it?
No, the drawings are
Okay,
just specific to the carport.
the carport. So that is, if the commission is concerned about the height of that curbing, it is a condition that we can add.
Submit a detail for that.
Yep.
We can build a wall. If you guys want to. I get it. We could continue the same Unilog product in the center and do a ring, and it can be a foot, 2 foot.
So is that part of what it looks like, part of the overall street?
It is. Sorry.
This shows in plan that it's edged with stone. So, but we can draw a detail for it.
I would think that makes sense to go to staff for review if the commission gives good guidance. I mean, what I don't want to see though is if the wall gets high and there's 3 foot setback, now we have a lot more gravel. Right, so that's not balance out with being able to navigate opening a door for a regular vehicle.
Well, I think the driveways are dimensioned at 12 feet and 12 feet and 14 feet, so that's not going to change.
Well, raise if we don't try a wall, that there would need to be a 3 foot setback. That's right.
Yeah, so a curb would be preferable.
I don't want it to become a de facto parking area, and that's when it's not really supposed to be.
Yeah. I think that with a curb of 6 inches as they proposed with a concrete base, so they're not movable or easily movable, that will really prevent a lot of vehicles from mounting that, because a 6-inch curb is what you see on most streets, between 4 and 6 inches. Yeah.
The introduction of some major plantings, like a tree or 2, would keep it from becoming a parking space.
About that mitigation.
We could require the good question. there's other things to discuss. I need to think about it for a minute.
Are we looking for height? We're looking for coverage? What are we looking for?
Well, I think that, right, but also, and also will thrive, right?
In the center area, is that what we're coming in? Really, to prevent it from being, turning into a parking spot, you'd want to have something with some height. You want to have, quite a few shrubs, maybe a couple trees. Definitely wouldn't want to do anything like ground cover, because that's.
Right.
And I see the buffer plantings as being significant in height, shrubs.
So I don't. Well, a couple of things that I'm thinking about. We think about a substantial planting in the island bed. One, if you plant something like a tree is of the historical resource, which could be an issue. You know, there are regulations about parking. You have to. City, and so they would be found. They would have to go through an approval process to legalize that. I plan mitigate the impact. The amount of paving you can require. You know, a tree. But the intent. The turnaround.
I would, if it was me, I would say shrubs. Because if you put one tree in the center, you're inviting people to park around it.
I would see two significant plantings framing the front door. So it's not like on access with the front door, but framing the access to the front door
Within the median.
within this interior.
You would think, you would think that shrubs would work. I mean, who's going to put their car up where there's a big bush, really? I mean, so that would be a good. Doing each side, that would help the fun.
And it's cheaper than building a wall. I know. We were this close.
Well, I guess I'm repeating what I think Caitlin said earlier. If we do approve this, we have to carefully explain why it's front parking in the front yard is appropriate in this case and why, in this case only.
Yeah.
We had a rare case. In a rare.
Well, I wouldn't describe it as parking, because I don't consider, even though I appreciate that that's how it could choose to be used, we don't control use. I see this as a turnaround to provide access, you know, there's really not.
It would be leveled where the existing retaining wall is.
Okay. Okay.
It would be level.
The zoning regulations about parking describe it as turnaround and other vehicle maneuvering areas and driveways leading to garages and parking areas. So, I mean, ideally, the whole round part would be a turnaround and vehicle maneuvering area, just along the north side of the car part and carport. There's thought about where the 14-foot is.
Have to work backwards, right? Is there any other alternative solution?
I do believe in the past property owner, the separate contractor applied for a new curb cut that would allow for a circular drive that would have.
We proposed that 4 years ago.
Yeah, and it was denied by the engineering department. So
Line the back of the house.
No, it looked just like this actually, and it just popped out to the curb right in the middle.
Or in the middle. The rest of them like around the back of the house and come in through the backyard, but that's.
so
The contractor actually does that, jumps the curb and parks in the back. Yes,
so no,
So. Last meeting that the property owner, because this is. Probably the most reasonable entry, there's an existing entry right here, correct?
correct.
So. For simply a landscape example. Why is this not preferable to have over here?
Because of the curb cut.
So this,
Yes.
that becomes.
And the carport leads into the back door, into the entry and kitchen and that kind of stuff.
That's right.
It's logical. Service through the house.
So if that's already been denied, then we're stuck with the curb cut that exists. So I think that needs to be worked into one of the
mhm.
I was gonna drive around Cuba Heights and look at Cuba Heights. Some houses have a circular drive coming up to the house, maybe you can throw a porte cochere and come back out again. I think they tend to come from one spot, go through and come out at a different spot rather than going around in a circle there.
That was the preference, yeah.
So, Brian, you think it's possible to put on solution?
Yeah, you can look at it.
We appreciate your confidence in me.
Man,
Yes, I think we can, if we can one more time go through the specific site conditions that make this permissible. I have the dangerous curve on Trip Hammer Road. The engineering department's denial of proposed new curb cuts. The act is reversible, the drive is reversible. Are there others?
Safety.
As logically, possible to do while still achieving the goals of the design. Let's. Direction.
It's a porous paving material. Blacktop, although I'm not sure that would be. Might be paved over in the future.
gravel,
Yeah, I mean, the,
crush number twos, that's what we're going
Question.
with. Super reversible. I mean,
Not limestone.
it would be limestone, yeah, or it can be limestone, both are readily available.
Says pea gravel.
That's what's there already. I recommend not using that ever for driveways or anything.
I wouldn't recommend it either.
Is
Yep. And limestone or bluestone are both available.
I have a limestone driveway and I'm now constantly weeding it.
Because you didn't make it deep enough. Well, weeds will germinate anywhere.
We can do that. I have a bulleted list that I will finesse into a coherent statement after the meeting.
So we would like to, okay,
Let's start the resolves.
As identified as the city of Ithaca's Cornell Heights Historic District summary statement, the period of significance to the area now known as the Cornell Heights Historic District is 1898 to 1937. As indicated in the New York State Building Inspector report form, the Prairie Style residence at 110 Triphammer Road was constructed between 1916 and 1970. Constructed within the period of significance of the Cornell Heights Historic, possessing a high level of integrity. The property is considered an element of the Cornell Heights Historic District. In consideration of this and all approvals of all approvals, I lost my place. In consider of this and all approvals of proposals for alterations, new construction or demolition in historic districts, the ILPC must determine that the proposed exterior work will not have a substantial adverse effect on the aesthetic, historical, or architectural significance and value of either the landmark or if the improvement is within a district of the neighboring improvements in such district. In considering architectural and cultural value, Commission shall consider whether the proposed change is consistent with the historic value and the spirit of the architectural style of the landmark or district in accordance with section 228-6 of the municipal code. In making this determination, the Commission is guided by the principles set forth in section 228-6B of the municipal code as further elaborated in section 228-6C. And by the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, and in this case specifically the following principles and standards. Principle number 2, the historic features of a property located within and contributing to the significance of a historic district shall be altered as little as possible, and any alteration shall be compatible with both the historic character of the individual property and the character of the district as a whole. Principle number 3, new construction located within a historic district shall be compatible with the historic character of the district within which it is located. Standard number 2, the historic character of a property will be retained and preserved. The removal of distinctive materials or alteration of features and spaces that characterize a property will be avoided. Standard number 9, new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. Standard number 10, new additions and adjacent or related new construction shall be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment will be unimpaired. With respect to principle 2 and standard number 2 and standard number 9, the construction of a carport, replacement of a retaining wall, and enlargement and reconfiguration of the driveway.
So I was going to propose that we separate the conversation about the carport and retaining wall from the discussion of the driveway. And so here, the construction of a carport and the replacement of a retaining wall
Will not
remove distinctive.
materials and will not alter features and spaces that characterize the property.
I would also recommend under why this is appropriate, just talking about the architectural features of the existing house and how they're replicated in the carport, which make it compatible. I do think this carport is different than other carport proposals that we have seen. So it's important to note that, the detailing of this carport makes it compatible.
extends an existing
Mhm.
one-story hip roof.
And you're gonna put that into the final resolution, okay. Also, with respect to principle 2 and principle number 3 and standard number 9, the carport driveway and retaining wall are compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features of the property and its environment. So do you want to take driveway out of?
I
that
was gonna
again?
take driveway out of here, because I think it's important to note that a driveway of this, when we do get to talking about it in the resolution, it's important to say that a driveway of this size would ordinarily not be appropriate for the historic district, but given the constraints of the site, it's required.
All right. With respect to standard number 10, the carport driveway and retaining wall can be removed in the future without impairment of the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment. And resolve that based on the findings set forth above,
Some more. Whereas this,
Yeah, so, and then we will do, basically repeat everything above that we talked about for the carport and retaining wall.
same principles and standards.
Same principles and standards, but specifically talk about the driveway. And that's where I'll mention, ordinarily it's not inappropriate, but given the circumstances, no new curb cuts allowed, which excludes a circular drive or an additional drive or a new driveway along the east property line. It's a dangerous curve, and so safety is a consideration. The driveway is reversible. It maintains as much green space as possible, given the demands of the project. And it's a natural paving material, which is more in keeping with the character of the neighborhood.
so you're putting all of that in.
Putting that all in, probably under with respect to standard number 2, principle number 2, standard number 2, and standard number 9.
Okay. So with respect to standard number 10, the carport driveway and retaining wall, oh, I said that already, can be removed in the
Mhm.
future without impairment. Okay, resolved that based on this finding set forth above, the property will not have the proposal will not have a substantial adverse effect on the aesthetic, historical, or architectural significance of the Cornell Heights Historic District as set forth in section 228-6, and be it further resolved that the Ithaca Landmarks Preservation Commission determines that the proposal meets criteria for approval under section 228-6 of the municipal code, and be it further resolved that the ILPC approves the application for certificate of permanence with the following condition.
Following conditions, and I have a minimum of a 6-inch curb. Staff approval of the retaining wall material. And do we want to add a condition about what the plantings are in the median? Okay,
What are we keep calling it, a median or island, or what are we calling that?
island.
I think there's some requirements that substantial plantings be provided
Okay.
in the island to prevent it from becoming a park space.
Okay.
Something to that effect.
Substantial.
Twin sculptures, could be anything.
They wanted a fountain. We talked them out of the fountain.
Dying to do it.
Doesn't sound like it was we talked you out of it then. It was.
They were thinking this terraced concrete thing that we don't let.
Definitely can't park on there.
So anything else going in? Sure.
Need a second?
You okay?
Did we get a
Do we have a second, please? Who wants to second this? Janet, okay. All in favor?
Well, I see 4 hands.
4 hands. Is that what we need?
Serving my future voting no, but thank you. I think it made it a much better project.
2, 3, 4, okay.
I'm not in favor.
All right, and I just want to say, as to my vote, I think it's the best design that could have been done on the site. Okay, and I like the carport. I like the way it made it. It continues the roof. But so far as I'm concerned, it's just too much driveway for that site, which is a very visible site. I mean, it's something everybody sees as they drive back and forth, and I just think it's too much. But if it had been a super close vote, I don't know how I would have voted, because I think. Yeah.
Actually, what's?
I mean, no, we were both on the edge,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
I mean, I think it's a much better proposal than what came before, and I don't think there are other alternatives, but that being said, I don't like the precedent.
Okay.
Yeah.
So move 4 to 2, which is enough, so.
Which is really uncommon. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You.
Yay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Happy work.
Yeah.
Seth, is that your three brothers? That's you? All right, okay, I'm making a note.
That's a good.
That's a good thing.
It's good when it's David.
Me too. I'm gonna call you.
Thank you. Thank you.
My back.
So let's see, under new business, we have 2 items. We have 215 College Avenue, advisory review of development adjacent to the Grandview House, 209 College Avenue, an individual landmark. And we will also have 205 and 209-217 West State Street, advisory review of development adjacent to the Downtown West Historic District.
All right, so
So first would be 215 College Avenue. Hmm.
thank you for joining us. Is Emmanuel Batil for your project, or can you hear us?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you. Is Emmanuel Batil part of your development
Yes,
group?
That's
Okay.
right. Yep.
And my apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly.
You share. Right. Hello. Can you guys hear us? Okay, great.
Yes, if you
Hello.
could give us a summary of the proposal.
I'm sorry, can you
See us?
see us too?
Yes, we can see
Okay.
you and we
Okay.
can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry about that.
No problem.
All
One
right.
member of the commission has stepped out for a minute, so if you could just hold off for a second. Oh, here
Yeah.
she comes.
Sure.
Never mind, we're all back.
Okay.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the opportunity for us to introduce our project to the board tonight. We're BKV Group representing the design team. And we have Annie Batai here representing ownership.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jack Borman. I'm the senior design partner for the project, and I specialize in doing student housing projects at universities. And I'm very happy to present our project tonight. So thank you very much. Jefferson, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Jefferson Troy. I'm on the architecture team at BKV.
Great, good. Well, what we'd like to do tonight, if it makes the most sense for your review, is just to walk you through our project and to share with you kind of how we've looked at the design, how we have, as I walked the site, I was very much impacted and impressed by the Grandview building and its position on the block and on the street, and being a building that's going to be a neighbor to the Grandview. It was very important for us to think of how that building is currently positioned on the site, how our building could relate to it, how it could be sympathetic, how it could be a comfortable neighbor as a contemporary building in its own time and place. And so with that, just some general background, it's a 7-story building. We have 86 units and 151 beds for students. We have a very strong amenity and entry element within the building, right on the street, for lots of eyes on the street. This is the general context showing how our building fits into the sort of rhythm of a series of buildings along College Avenue. The scale of our building is very similar to some of the other buildings along the street from the standpoint of its overall scale and fabric. So next slide. This illustrates kind of how we began the project, which is to look at the streetscape, to look at the site plan, look at how our setbacks and how it relates to the setback of the Grandview house, which has the yard in front and the steps up to the upper entry level. And so we, in our design, view that one of the things we want to do is to, as best possible, we're a fairly larger adjacent building, so we want to find ways to maintain the visibility of the Grandview building as you're walking down the street, and to respect to a great degree the setback context of the building, and at the same time develop our own size and shape for our massing. Key to that is this setback terrace area that is shown in this slide, which represents our general setback area for the sensitive edge and also the setback. You can see our entryway, our public terrace space, and then as you go further north on College, we are set back a smaller distance, but an area that allows for planters and benches, so that we're expanding here the public streetscape. So that as you move along College Avenue, we want to embrace and engage the public streetscape as a part of the overall building. So if you go to the next slide, please. These are some existing views of the building. On the left, we have the new construction of Catherine on the right, and then the existing building on the left. And then you can see the Grandview building as you look down College. From the opposite direction, you can see the building in the foreground with our site in the background. Some of the things that we felt were particularly critical in our understanding of the architecture of the Grandview was, first off, the setback, and then secondly, sort of the base and porch that is on the front of the building projecting, that has a overall sort of datum line at about 18 feet above grade, and then the 2 floors above that plus the roof that creates the building mass in relationship to the site and to the sidewalk. So next slide, please. Now we're looking at how we're going to fashion our building in relationship to the street and to the Grandview. Here you can see how the first 20 feet of our building in the background starts to reflect to that sort of porch elevation. It also illustrates where we've set back the first 22, 23 feet of our building, considerably set back from College, about, 18 to 20 feet. And then it's 23 feet high, and then it's set back another 4 feet as it turns the corner, so that we're creating that horizontal line, and we're also creating the sort of breathing room at the ground level to relate to the front yard. So then the second part of our building is what pulls up closer to the street. And then we have the overhang as you go up College for the seating area. And in the middle of those two building masses, you have the entry. The articulation of the building upper floors along College Avenue, that's the darker cement panel building. Here we have individual windows in a more of a punched window character, again, reflecting more the sort of window character and fabric of the grand view. We also have, you can't quite see it, but we have these vertical bay windows that move back along the site that give a little bit of that same kind of similar character in a contemporary language for the center bay area of the grand view. So next slide, please. Looking at it from sort of across the street and up College at part of the Catherine building is we're looking under our building over to the grand view to create this sort of setback open air area that's about 23 feet off the sidewalk to give visibility to the porch. My feeling was that the first two floors, the porch, the entry, the porch roof, and then as you began the upper part of the building, that was the part that we wanted to make sure was to the greatest degree possible, very visible from College as you walked up and down and as you approached the site. So that our building was giving view to the grand view and at the same time trying to relate to our overall building massing and streetscape. We've articulated the building into a lighter building mass with double window, and then the punched window mass in the darker material to, again, create more proportions that are more vertically proportioned rather than more of a large mass like the existing building to the left. So, and here again, you can see the seating area at our entry level. The next slide, please. This is looking at the entry with the grand view in the background, the terrace in front, and then you can see the 3 levels of amenity spaces. The lower level amenity area, then the main amenity area, and then in that main amenity area, there's a student study mezzanine that allows us to have a lot of visual access to the street, much more like an enclosed porch area, and to create sort of a visual connection to activate the street, much like what you have on the porch at the grand view when people are sitting out there and people are sitting in the terrace, just to really activate the street so that there's a very strong transparency between the building and the street and the pedestrian movement. Next slide, please. Here it is as we're standing on the driveway that is between our building and the grand view. You can see the lower level terrace. There's a ramp that makes it accessible from the street level, so it's fully public. And there's some steps over by the entry. And then as you can see how the building transitions to the entryway as you move up College Avenue. Next slide. This is a street elevation that shows the scale and relationships of the building in relation to the other buildings on the street. Obviously, there's a wide variety of shapes and forms, but we wanted to concentrate on our building having more of a vertical element with the dark and the light building masses, and then the openness at the ground floor to create a relationship of sort of the first couple of levels between buildings along the street, the grand view, and our building as a very comfortable, activated outdoor space relating to the sidewalk. So, the lower slide is our similar street elevation over on Linden. And you see the three materials that are our primary materials. We have, these are cement fiber panels that are either 18-inch by 8 feet, is it?
10 feet.
10 feet. And then they have joints at 18 inches by 10 feet. And that's the light and the charcoal color material. Those are solid panels. And then the third material, which is adding more of a residential kind of character to it, are these cement fiber panel simulated wood panels, which pick up some of the wood, some of the horizontal wood material texture that, again, is similar to the residential character of the Lakeview,
Yeah.
Grand View, excuse me.
Yeah, if I may, so these are the Ceraclad panels on this year, which are high quality cement panels that designed to be very durable over the years. And these panel has those ceramic coating does not just only give it like crisp and clean look, also helps to keep their colors, they don't fade over time. And they also low maintenance, so very easy to stand up well to the elements, which keep it good looking without too much upkeeping. And in the Grandview house, you know, back in the day, the wood siding is considered like premium material of the time. In the same spirit that we're, you know, these cement panels represent a modern take on that tradition. It's high performing, visually refined, and chosen to be, you know, longevity in mind.
So I think that's kind of our general story and design presentation, and we would look for your thoughts and insights on our project.
In some of the images, little railing running up from the street in between Grand Project, yes, that. And then there's it looks like, is that a driveway that's next to that?
Yeah.
What is that?
That's an existing easement driveway that is half dedicated to, well, it's an easement for the Grandview property usage. It's not a driveway that is really used by our project.
Correct.
It's really the Grandview's driveway. It's just half on our property.
But it doesn't go around the back of the property to service
Yes, it goes to the back of the property to service parking. Parking for the Grandview. And is it the neighbor property as well?
Yes, I think there's another property at the back there.
There's a house in back that
Yeah,
it
so
services
just
as well.
Parking for that house. I think it's Beard property. Yeah.
It's an existing.
eyes on the street in Collegetown is sitting with a porch and house with overstuffed all rents out on the front porch.
Yeah, we're having difficulty understanding.
That's fine. Say hi. I don't know what your eyes on the street, but that's not very much street for 71 bedrooms.
I'm sorry, can you repeat? And there's breaking off a little bit.
I know Collegetown used to be like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. But there were wood frame houses, porches on the front, and there were people sitting on the porches, renting houses, radio, porch out there. That's it.
So the applicant is working, they're working with the planning board to complete their environmental review. One of the components of the environmental review is the impact of the proposed development on adjacent historic structures. So how does this building positively, negatively, or neutrally impact the designated landmark adjacent to it? And are there recommendations that the commission could make if there are features of the development that you feel have a negative impact on the development, are there particular mitigations or changes in the design that you could recommend that would address some of those concerns?
Well, I think one of the things that often happens with large buildings being put next to historic sites is they become one of the longstanding issues of large buildings next to historic ones is how much darker it gets. Do we have an understanding of, is there sunlight that is going to be significantly blocked by this property? The Grandview, I mean, that was a real problem in New York City is a classic example, is that big buildings went up next to small ones and then it was really quite dark. And he created, so I think that's one thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, we have roughly 18 feet.
Yeah.
Between we're on the north side of the Grandview, and the one building face is 18 feet, and then there's recesses where the balconies are at that are another 5 feet. So there's quite a bit of articulation on that south side, so that it doesn't look like a solid wall. You want to show that south elevation? Yeah, so this doesn't read there. There's individual balconies between. If you look at the plan, if you have a plan, maybe not, but yeah,
Recesses.
right. So this is where you see the the articulation along that wall in relationship to the Grandview, much like that bay on the side of theirs. There's a series of bay windows on that side that help articulate that wall so that it varies between 18 feet and 25 feet between the Grandview and the new building, as a trying to be sensitive to not only the the potential shadowing, since the Grandview really shadows on the new building, but to not have it look like a linear sort of canyon, that it's articulated on our building side. Just like to a degree it's articulated on the Grandview building side. I think this plan shows how the setback relates pretty evenly with the front yard setback of the Grandview. That's what we were trying to describe in the renderings. Go back to the rendering on the, yes, right there, right there, yes.
But considering the entire nature of College Avenue, as Steve mentioned, has totally changed, it has shifted in this direction. Fortunately, in this case, this building is to the north of the Grandview, which helps a little bit.
I think in these circumstances, I mean, it's clear the city's incentivizing this kind of development, right? So when it comes to the historic property, the setbacks, the articulation of the facade in relationship to the historic structure, the articulation of the street facade. I mean, I do appreciate an effort at carving out the corner of the front facade that's closest to the Grandview. So it's that wall is also not a flat wall or a flat plane. And then the quality of the materials. I think that's making sure that the quality of materials, that's what I would hope the planning board is looking at, is the materiality choice. I mean, every time these new buildings get constructed, I hope that someone's thinking, which is not a criticism of you. I beat this dead horse every time we see a new property, but it would be lovely if this property qualified for historic district in 50 years, right? Like, we want to encourage construction that is sustainable and that is an architectural asset in the future.
Right.
So high quality building materials and not something that is effectively disposable architecture.
Yep.
To me is really important for new construction. So,
Right.
I mean, I guess that's, I don't know if I could really make any comments on the coloration or the size, massing scale. It's, you know,
Gonna be big.
it's going to be big and it has a lot of big neighbors. So there we are. That's what College Town, I mean, but the seismic shift in College Town in the last 20 years has, and I can't even speak before that, but in the last 20 years has been something else. So here we are. So those
Well,
would be
I appreciate that concern, and it's our concern as well. That's why we really made an effort to break the building down into components and scaled pieces that makes a serious effort to be more human scaled and much more comfortable for the bigger buildings that are now on College is to have them be individual masses, not one large building. So we've articulated them in sort of 30-foot wall planes and moving them back and forward to provide articulation. So, which is a sensitive scale effort.
I wondered, on the main facade, where are you,
Go back. Yeah.
the elevations related to the sand color, for lack of a better term? Where are you drawing these elevations from a particular inspiration? Like, is there a level for, because it doesn't look like at least on the elevation side that lines up with anything in particular. I just wondered what the rationale for picking those heights. Am I making
Picking the
sense?
materials.
No, not picking the materials, but like on the articulation of the front where you have the V shape feature.
Yeah.
I just wondered what drove, if you were looking at where those elevation heights were. Sometimes, sometimes you see with new construction, right, that in historic districts or in relation to historic architecture, that particular elevations of the bump outs and articulation is actually being drawn from other resources, right, as an effort to blend in. That doesn't seem to be the case here necessarily, but I don't want to hold you to that only because of the elevation drawings of the other properties. So I just wondered, is that height of the main base area with the V in it, is that being drawn from something else, or is that just, it works with the programming of your intended space?
I think it's being driven more by trying to create a 30-foot wide by almost 20-foot deep sort of front yard feeling to this contemporary building in relationship to the front yard visibility in front of the Grandview. I mean, that's where the whole idea got started, was, let's take our 65 or 60-foot wide building and let's break it into two pieces and push the piece next to the Grandview back on the first 20 some odd feet, to push that back so that as a pedestrian, when you walk down the street, especially going north to south, you're able to very quickly see the Grandview building as you walk down the street. Coming from the other direction, you see the Grandview building first, and then you see our setback building in the background. Again, sort of continuing the spatial feeling of that openness in front of the Grandview. Our architecture is of the 2025 era, but there can be ways in which we can spatially relate to what the Grandview is. The porch we felt was particularly a strong element in defining the architecture of the first 20 feet of the Grandview. And so taking that setback and then raising it up 23 feet, which is really the third floor, was a way to, again, create a horizontal line as you see the the brown material wrapping around the corner. And it's also set back 5 feet as it goes around the corner to further emphasize that horizontal quality of those visual lines. And I think those two were sort of massing and spatial relationships that didn't specifically try and sort of reflect any specific materials in the two buildings, but to reflect the sort of spatial quality as you walk down the street. And as you look at the north part of our building, that has basically a 10 and 12 foot first floor, and then it has the double floor articulation for the 6 floors above. That's its base, and then the upper mass of the building. This articulation of the double high windows is similar to our project at 325, and this material is similar as well. So we did feel that we could create some simplicity by using some similar materials on this building to what we're using on 325. That's true because 325 is the lighter material and the darker material. There, the darker material is metal. We didn't feel the metal was appropriate next to the Grandview, that it needed to be a simpler material with less texture, because we didn't want the texture of our building to compete with the texture of the horizontal clapboard siding and moldings of the Grandview. So we clearly view our building as a foil to the articulation and the materiality of the Grandview.
Okay, thank you for that elaboration.
If it's all right with the commission, I just had a question for the commission first and then the applicants. So looking at the Grandview, the character defining features are, its size and scale, but the tower, which was designed to be visible from downtown. And so how, one, does the commission agree that those are pretty important character defining features? And then the question for the commission is, how does this building connect to those character defining features? And then to the applicant, how do you feel the building responds to that character defining feature of the tower being something that its height was really significant, and having something of this height right next door?
Well, it's true that when the Grandview building was built, the tower was clearly a gesture that, much like a church tower or any other sort of classical tower on a building, it became a visual sort of element in the skyline. The current situation, where we have a 80-foot height eligible in the overall downtown planning goals, we now have the situation where we have higher buildings adjacent. So then the issue is, do we spatially, within the context of walking up and down College Avenue, do you have, the worst case, is that we have these buildings sort of totally right up to the property lines with minimum setbacks, and sort of hemming in the Grandview building. I think for me, as a designer, the first 20 to 30 feet is very important, and then the roof lines are very important as well. So I think we have tried to make a very strong effort with the first 20 some odd feet to have a spatial relationship that allows the visibility of the Grandview, which is beautifully articulated. The tower element, it has the visibility. It's fortunately the building to the south and us to the north sort of frame the overall building and the tower. The tower's sort of symmetrical on the Grandview. And I think as far as the architectural gesture of it, we felt the bay windows on the south side of our facade were a gesture to the vertical articulation of the, and unfortunately this drawing doesn't show it as well, of the, there, that's much better, of the articulation of the Grandview. So we can't be the same, but I think we can have residential characteristics that are architecturally expressed that give a verticalness to our building to relate to the verticalness that's the fabric of both buildings. So, you know, we're different, but I think we can have a similar scale relationship, and we can try and make as much visibility of the Grand View as a new development north of the Grand View would be capable of doing.
I had one question on it. You mentioned the exterior materials, where you're using light and dark material. Why did you decide to use the dark material on the Grand View side instead of the lighter material?
I think primarily the reason was to, you could do it either way. You know, I think we wanted the dark, I view a darker material as receding and lighter colors coming forward. That's not everyone's opinion, but that's part of having the darker material be a foil for the Grand View articulation. We wanted a much more neutral backdrop, and that's the reason we picked the darker color.
I'm just mentioning that because there's been some concern about the darkness on that side of the building, as far as shadow and just general feelings related to what it would be like in the Grand View once that building is in place.
Well, half of our facade on that south face is the lighter tan wood material. So there's you know, only about half of the material is the darker fabric, and that's part of the reason that when we turn the corner, well, to help articulate the corner by itself, and then to as we went past to the right, as you look there, half the material is the lighter wood color, and then the other half's the darker color. So, and we did that on purpose to have to not get in the situation that you're concerned about, is that you have a dark wall opposite. So we have some of the dark material because we wanted to articulate it, but to create a better scale feeling. The tan material at the first two floors is really the base of the building, and then you have the upper sections, and then you have the top two floors. So again, as we turn the corner and look at the side of the building, you know, you have the biggest exposure of the building. So we felt it most important to articulate it with the base, middle, and top.
Speaking of base, middle, and top, I forget which famous architect said a building should celebrate the way where it meets the sky. It might have been Louis Sullivan, I don't know. But he also was arguing for a base shaft and a column capital. But I would say Grandview House certainly celebrates where it meets the sky exuberantly.
Yep.
How does your building celebrate where it meets the sky?
Well, on that south elevation, it clearly is with the articulation of the materials. And as you are on College, we tried to focus more on dividing the building in half on the street and then setting the darker portion back 5 feet, so that we're clearly trying. I mean, if you look at the Grandview House, there's about a 4-foot setback on both sides. So the front is really centered with the double windows, and then you have a single window on both sides as it, you know, sort of turns the corner. We think that's a similar reason why we pulled the darker building back from the white building, was to create that facade offset, which not only enhances the kind of vertical proportions, but it also creates articulation and makes the building, you know, less massive.
And what is the detail where the building meets the sky?
It's not classical. It's very simplistic and timeless. It's not a true two-story or one-story change in material. We've chosen not to do that as a part of the articulation of the building.
Yeah, and the south facade, like the window patterning that we're really trying to kind of respond to the Grandview building. That is really, you see like the wood kind of woven behind the dark pattern that kind of celebrate the verticality of the design. I think that's one of the things that we're trying to kind of emphasize in the design. Yeah.
I mean, it's a contemporary building, and so we have to articulate the contemporary building so that it has a scale sensitivity. It's not the same architecture by any means as the Grandview, but I think the Grandview has a beautiful scaled articulation, and I think that's, I mean, it's very symmetrical, but it's still articulated as it has the center tower, as it has the double windows, the single window, and as it steps back on the corners. So that's been the cue that we felt was important for our contemporary building, is to make sure it's significantly articulated so that both spatially and physically it has a comfortable scale.
I just want to say that given the design challenge of putting in a building many times the size of the Grandview in scale, I mean, not just in elevation, but just in bulk. I don't know how much you could have done, but I appreciate what you have done. And I think pulling back the plaza 23 feet in to keep in line with the front facade of the Grandview, I think it's nice. And it's a lot better than it could have been. And I think it's worth acknowledging that.
Any other comments?
So trying to summarize.
I'm sorry, we're having trouble hearing.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes,
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 great.
yes.
I take the conversation tonight, summarize it, and prepare a memo for the planning board. And circulate those comments to you before they're distributed to the planning board, so you have the opportunity to comment and make sure that I accurately reflect discussions tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
for the
you.
Thank you for the very good presentation. It was clear and very interesting.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so next we have under new business 205 and 209-217 West State Street advisory review of development adjacent to the Downtown West Historic District. So advisory review of development adjacent to the Downtown West Historic District. So,
All right, for if you are live streaming the meeting on YouTube, if you could mute that, we're getting some feedback in council chambers.
Sorry, I think that was me.
Not a problem. Right. So we have another development project adjacent to a designated historic resource, the Downtown West Historic District. So we have the project sponsors here tonight to talk about their project and how it may or may not impact the characteristics of the Downtown West Historic District. So that I will hand it over to the development team.
Thank you very much. I'm Bear Smith. I'm from Holt Architecture, and I'm the project manager on this. We have with us Steve and Victoria. I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Steve Woods. I'm with Fisher Associates. We're the landscape architects on the project with Holt, working with INHS. We're also helping them through the City of Ithaca's planning board approvals and timeless process.
Hi, my name is Victoria Neenan. I'm with INHS and we're the developer and we will be the property owner and property manager.
Alrighty. Let me go ahead and just kind of give you the broad strokes of what it is that we're trying to achieve on this project. So starting off, this will be an affordable housing project targeted for seniors, and there will also be a daycare component. We are located, as of tomorrow, we will be located in the new flood zones. So that is a challenge that this project is going to be facing head on. We are also going to be pursuing passive house certification on this project is a goal that we're currently aiming for as well. And so with that in mind, that is some of those constraints and challenges. We have been trying to find opportunities to turn them into opportunities to really explore how we can best be a good neighbor in the context of the downtown area. I'm going to go ahead and share. Oh, can I share my screen? Yes, I can.
Yes.
Alrighty. I go ahead and share my screen. And I'm just going to start off with a little Google Earth just to give some contextual background of where we're looking at. So let me flip this around. So north is up. Alrighty. So we are essentially two blocks down from the Ithaca Commons. We are going to be located right here where the old family medicine building is, along with city parking lot on the adjacent side of it. We are in between the Cornell Daily Sun and Integrated Medicine. The project is these two parcels here, which will be combined together. The historic district that we're adjacent to is right over here. However, we do want to be thoughtful about our context next to the Cornell building as well, because we think there's some significance there to be mindful of. And as part of that, one of the first things that jumped out to us in terms of trying to contextually fit in with the neighborhood is that these buildings, both on either side, have a setback from the property line that is not matched by any of the other buildings on the street. And so that is one of the elements that we really try to lean on and lean into, in particular with solving our floodplain issues with needing to elevate. We'll need to elevate the building between 3.5 to 5.5 feet, depending on which side of the site. There's about a 2-foot pitch. And really trying to use that as an element to create a porch aesthetic. So we are in the process of updating our elevations and trying to contextualize and make the massing feel more conducive to the neighborhood. But as a part of that, I'll start here down at the bottom. So we will have a ramping element that will be going along from east side from the commons, going up towards the main entry of the residential component. And then it will continue across at that elevated level, all the way over to the daycare entry, and then transitioning down with some stairs. We thought that this approach matched both the adjacent properties with the idea of having to step back, having this planter area that's out in front between the sidewalk and the setback, and then creating an almost porch-like element with having this elevated platform with a canopy that would extend across over top. We are trying to find that fine edge between what is and what may be in terms of contextually of how we're going to tie in. So with this being an affordable project, we need to keep the bottom or keep the cost in mind as we're going forward. So we really wanted to be thoughtful about what resilient materials are we using and using where. So at the grade level on the bottom of this building, we're really looking to lean in towards a masonry element, most likely going to be a brick, and potentially tying some of that up in some strategic areas throughout the facade. On the upper portion, which will be wood frame construction on the upper portion, again, for cost savings measures, we are going to go with a metal siding material to try to help give it some resiliency in that manner, but also try to contextually try to fit in with the neighborhood with some of the newer developments. One of the big things that we really try to draw inspiration from was the turn of the century brick buildings that are located all around the downtown area. You'll notice on a lot of those buildings, they have this vertical, almost embedded column element that goes along between the units or between the windows. And then there's also a subtle horizontal band that occurs with a lot of those turn of the century buildings. While we're not trying to do a one-for-one replication, we wanted to try to emphasize some of those elements within the facade to really try to contextually fit in with the neighborhood of some of the other buildings on the main street there. As your eyes have probably been drawn to it, we are exploring the opportunity of having a mural inside the central stair on the front of the building, and then the stair tower off to the western side, having some sort of mural there. These are only placeholders. These are not the final images, but just the idea of something colorful, something bright, to really kind of tie into some of the more artistic elements that we are seeing popping up all over the Ithaca area. And then one other, I think, fun architectural detail that we've kind of tried to sneak in with this is with the metal panels. They tend to have a lot of corrugation of some type. There's some really fun profiles that do have very sharp delineation between the lines and such. And we wanted to kind of take an opportunity for the watercourse portion of the building of potentially corbelling the brick to kind of match that language and tie into a little bit of the classic while also bringing in a little bit of the modern at the same time. In terms of plans, to give you a little bit more context, again, here we have the ramping element up to the entry. I will note that this ramp is of a slope that is technically not a ramp. It is an elevated walkway, but it is sloping. We try to do that to limit the impact of keeping in mind senior tenants for this building, trying to make it as easy as possible given the floodplain concern. That element would extend all the way across the front and then, of course, end with the stairs on the sides. Underneath, there will be a little drop-off area in the back of the building. This will serve as a drive-through for the daycare to be able to drop off and have a nice little covered area. We are also exploring opportunities if this could be used as a pickup and drop-off area for any of the residents as well. And then to the bottom portion of the site in this open area here will be a play area for the daycare portion to utilize. And I think just scale and size of the building, we are looking at a 5-story building. It's going to be 56 one-bedroom units. And I think there's going to be a community room on the front corner to try to activate the street facade a little bit. And then, of course, the classrooms for the daycare will also be on that street side facade. And I think, let me turn it over to Steve and Victoria if there's any key things I'm missing. Otherwise, I think we're ready for some feedback and comments.
Now, I think as far as site goes, we are looking to be sensitive to adjacent contexts. The current building that's on the site now does run directly up against the property line. So bears comments about trying to suggest a back offset in keeping with adjacent properties or semi-adjacent properties across the adjacent streets is an intent there. And then we are getting to talk a little bit more about the idea of the porch concept. There's a sort of a big frontage that's happening along State Street. That is the most public, movable, visible section of the roadway area. So being able to offer some sort of language of private, semi-private between the sidewalk section and the access sections of entry into the vestibules, given the given the floodplain relationships and problems that we're solving, it offers up an opportunity we see to have this porch idea happen there. And porch is sort of in quotes in a very simple way, given the context and scale of the building. We are also looking to make sure, as Bear mentioned, that those outdoor areas, though limited in area, given the space, are placed in their best possible locations. Childcare play areas outside of the cover of the building, so we are open air and not covered in that area, so we're getting nice daylight and access there. And we're also looking to take the available green space that's between that setback and the sidewalk, articulate that a little bit more, to offer some buffering and screening of the grade transition of the sloped walkway in the elevated porch area, and also trying to have the articulation of the green space tie into the elevation of the building. So we're looking to have some sort of notional planting that ties into the common locations and open spaces, so that sort of reads down to the ground plane a bit more. There is a streetscape character that's slowly being developed along State Street a bit, where we're retaining the existing trees, but also playing into using improved sidewalks and paved areas or unit paved stone areas in the treeway zone, similar to what was done down at, I'm forgetting the name of the building now, that's further east or further west. But at any rate, it's predominantly about the site and about the building, but those are the sort of few comments we want to say about the site.
I have two things that I'd like to say. First, I think, speaking for myself, I love INHS and I love what you guys do, and just really support it. And your bigger projects recently in the last 10 years or so, starting with Breckenridge, I think have just turned out great and have been real assets to wherever they've been placed. But looking at this large building, I keep visualizing in relation to its neighbors. I mean, you've given us a picture of just a long building that I know is going to go along West State Street, but I can't visualize the size, scale, and massing and siting of it, except in some larger visualization with its neighbors, which you haven't provided. So I'm wondering if you have anything that would let us visualize this in the proposed context, because otherwise
it's a well-heard comment. It is something that we are working on in the process of trying to provide for the next planning board meeting. I apologize that we were unable to get that prepared for this meeting, but it is something that we're being thoughtful about. The only comment I could potentially provide at this opportunity is that we do have street buffers on either side. This building over here is about 2 stories either side, between 30 to 40 feet to the highest point of them, but predominantly in that 30-foot range. Our building overall, while it meets zoning, is going to be just shy of 60 feet. So almost twice the scale.
I had the pleasure of earlier today being at the INHS ribbon cutting for the Trumansburg project. And that's I second David's comments that INHS does wonderful work. So would you mind going to the aerial view that shows where the play area is? so I happen to sit on the board of the Trumansburg Community Nursery School, and INHS has the community nursery school is part of the INHS project in Trumansburg. And what struck me is that every single time those children are taken outside to play, they're going to have to cross that driveway. And I wondered if you looked at any, while that may be outside the purview of the ILPC in terms of size, scale, and massing, I would want to make sure the planning board is thoroughly assessing that. From a functionality standpoint, did you look at any alternatives that did not require that? Because it seems to me, I mean, I think it's great that there's an outdoor play area. I'm not criticizing that. I'm just wondering if there are other design choices that would achieve similar results that didn't require crossing a driveway.
Yeah, again, a very well heard comment and something that we explored early on. Part of the challenge is given the performa that the building needs to try to hit to be able to move forward is it is constrained on the site for size. So where you're seeing that drive lane and drop off, the building does extend over top of it. So the only way that we would be able to facilitate the play area to not cross the driveway would to be to tuck it underneath the building and not have the access to natural light. So it was unfortunately one of those this or that moments, given the size and scale of the building.
And is that because in part you don't want to go up another floor? I mean, I'm sure you're working within zoning, but I think that I do think the planning board should consider that if there are exemptions that could be made or suggestions that could be made.
Yep. So if we were to go up another story, it would require a zoning variance at that point. Also, it would change the construction type of the building so that we wouldn't be able to use wood frame construction for the upper levels, which would be cost prohibitive.
I will also add that as we continue to develop the site plan and develop the building and vehicular access and movements, we are looking to dedicate a raised crossing between the access point from the building to that play area so that all safety and movements are done at a coplanar level of pedestrian movement between those two zones to identify cars who are coming through there for movement of the slowdown. Any type of markings or signage will be added to provide, the utmost care and protection of those things. We did, as Bear mentioned, we also at a certain point did look at having it underneath the building, in addition to potentially popping up the building to provide adequate space. We were also challenged in the actual space available, given the negotiation of vehicular movements and having the play area be adjacent to the building. The space ended up being almost half the size, if not less than half the size, just barely meeting the minimum required goals for outdoor play for the childcare use that may happen there. So we're trying to get the biggest and best area as possible for use there. And the planning board's also been very vocal in being able to have space that's also providing for potential multi-generational interface between the kids and the seniors that are living there. So in developing this plan, we're looking to have some outdoor seating area associated with or adjacent to this play area so that there might be the opportunity for interface between the residents that are there as well as the children who are there for daycare.
Thank you.
I have a question. Maybe I didn't hear it right, but did you say that they were all one-bedroom apartments?
Correct.
So who are you looking at as tenants?
So it would be people 62, families 62 and older. So it could be individuals or couples.
Okay, so, all right, so the childcare would be for other people from outside that community coming into. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I think if you're talking about affordable, when you get to the point where you're assessing that criteria for what is affordable and what is not affordable, you think about seniors and the fact that a lot of people do have a fixed income. So keeping that in mind, I'm sure you are.
Yes. Yeah. Right now we're looking at households that range from about 30% of AMI to 80% of AMI. And we always accept Section 8 vouchers. So people who are even below the 30% AMI. income would be able to afford living there.
Okay.
Well, I want to come back to my point. It seems to me that the one thing that we have been asked to do, which is to evaluate how this project would relate to the Downtown West Historic District, we can't do. I don't feel we have the information to say much or anything. And I'm sad about it because I would like to, and I would like to help this project along, but I just don't feel that we have enough.
Understood. The buildings on essentially both directions here are the ones that are within the historic district on this side. And I will also note, while it's not in the historic district, we did think it was important to at least recognize the age and also some of the architectural detailing of the Cornell building here, with especially the brick presidents, and then also some of the items. So
I was just going to add that building was identified as a potentially a resource that could be locally landmarked as part of the recently adopted downtown neighborhood plan.
that sounds appropriate.
I think that's, we have a height on those, I think, because it's really to me the height comparison of understanding just much larger, 60 feet is compared to what's already down. I mean, the Cornell building, not into a building for tomorrow.
No, the Cornell Sun building is probably a 30-foot building across the street from the Cornell Sun. I believe that's around a 4-story building, so approximately 40 feet. The fire station next to it is a 2-story building, 3-story building, so it's probably like between 30 and 35 feet. Let's see. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then the other side of that corner is a parking lot, I believe.
Correct. The opposite side is parking lot, and then across the street you have 3-story, 3.5-story building here, and then you have the 1-story Tompkins County Annex building.
Yeah.
And behind it, contextually, there is also a 3-story apartment building in over here. And then if I back out real quick, we also have on the other portion of the back of the site is the funeral home right over here.
So I used to live basically right across the street from this property. Had a couple happy years there. I'm less concerned about the height personally, just because I am familiar with that neighborhood pretty well, and because it's across the street from the historic properties and across the street from the Cornell Sun building. I think it feels very different than the previous project we looked at. That was literally towering right over the historic property. So I don't think this is small by any stretch, but I also, it's a pretty constrained site. I don't know realistically how otherwise to thread the needle on the scale of it.
Bear, if you don't mind driving a little bit, if you go down West State Street to, is it the mental health building? That I think is a good height comparison between the historical resource. I think that's a 5-story building. Yeah.
Yep, that's 4 stories. Going further down the street, contextually, in terms of scale, you would be looking more along the lines of what they did at Ironworks. And then going up State Street, the other direction, obviously we know things start climbing in height from there and get much taller. So once we get down into this area, then we start getting into 4 stories just a block away, 2 stories over here, and then you start climbing even further. And I'll just mention, at least material wise, there was a thought with the turn of the century building comment of some of the verticality. This is kind of a good example, I think, of what we're trying to embrace, of having a primary vertical banding that occurs and then having a subtler secondary horizontal. Not a one-for-one language translation, but drawing inspiration from it.
How does the size of this building and height compare to Breckenridge Place?
Shorter than Breckenridge. Breckenridge is 6 stories.
And I would just point out that in addition to contextual information, we're missing east, west, and south elevations.
Yes. We do have older elevations that had been previously shared with the city planning board. However, we are in the process of updating some of the language on the facades. So I could share them for scale purposes, but I do want to be very mindful that they will look much different than what we're currently pursuing.
I guess since the back half of the building is carved out for a story, I'm just curious how that works at both ends and how that works along the back to have the overhang.
Yep, understood. So again, contextually, colors, totally a different direction that we're heading right now. This facade here would be across from the Cornell Daily Sun building. We do have porch elements that are happening at or balcony elements that are happening at every floor for an outdoor opportunity. There is the carved out portion here for the drive-through to occur in underneath, and over in this treed area would be where the play area would occur. And then on the opposite side, the stair tower still is in flux. This was the element that you saw a mural on the exterior as opposed to inside of the stair, at least in the previous rendering. And again, having contextually the drive-through underneath. One of the things that we're trying to embrace is because of the floodplain elevations, we're really trying to focus on this water course level and some of the language that you see more consistently with historic buildings that used to have that more civic entry that was raised up. So really trying to play on that strong, robust base layer with the bricks, because that's really what is going to be the street experience for most passerbys. What's happening up above, while will be visible, and there's going to be little vignettes and moments that they'll see through the trees, there are very mature trees along the street. So it's one of those elements we wanted to embrace. We don't want those trees to go away, and we really want that to play in. So a nice, robust civic, if you will, kind of vibe and feel with the resiliency of the brick and lighter and airier up above. I will note, I forgot to mention, one of the things that we're currently exploring is with the brick. We're aiming more towards this terracotta red color, and we do want to embrace that also into the facade because it is a color palette that is quite present on State Street.
The other thing I wanted to point out there that was a little bit more visible in the side elevations is that there is an overhead canopy articulation for that porch area or that walkway area that runs out in front of that front portion of the building down at that street level, sort of offering a little bit more of a scaled feel of that first elevation instead of having just the pure straight elevation. It also for protection and safety is providing a little bit of protection of weather on those walkway surfaces. So safety during those slippery moments or moments outside of just normal maintenance times.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's been helpful.
Right. To David's comment about materials and the ability to comment, does the commission, do you want to see more material, like, I know that the timeline is a consideration for the applicant, but does the commission want the opportunity to review additional materials before they make comments, or do you have anything to go on?
I would like more materials, yeah, and not, I would like to have a greater sense of the materiality of the project itself. And I would like some drawings that would show elevations from four sides with respect to its neighbors.
Okay.
But totally in the context of wanting to support you guys and wanting to see this building.
I can fully appreciate your comments, and it's both recognizing the timeline with the turnaround on these things, but also there is a certain level of due diligence that we can share those items with you guys. That's a fair request, in my opinion.
Okay.
I'll also just add to that within the course of approvals through the planning board, we are going to get the point where materiality does get more finalized. We'll be sharing actual cut sheets and we're able to actually have physical materials available that are represented to the planning board for approval. So to Bear's point, due diligence to be able to share those items with you as well. And if they're needed prior to comment, that's understandable. But any type of comment that you can give now will also be greatly appreciated.
All right. Well, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Okay, let's see. Next thing on our agenda, approval of minutes.
I don't see it on the agenda, but shouldn't we have a moment for public comment if there is?
I think it accidentally got left off. We should have one. So there isn't. So no members of the public sent in comments this month, and no one signed up to speak this evening.
Okay. Do we have any comments concerning the minutes?
So there weren't minutes because I need to work on them, but I have assistants now, and I'm
Okay.
excited about
Good,
it.
very. So then we move on to administrative matters. Historic Ithaca Preservation Award nomination deadline is July 24th.
So if you can think of any projects in the city, in Tompkins County, that you feel deserve an award from Historic Ithaca, I encourage you to either submit a nomination yourself or reach out to the property owner, design professional, the people that worked on the project, contractors, and encourage them to apply. It's a great award program that recognizes the hard work people do to either preserve a historic resource or do a project that respects its historic environment. So just wanted to plug in there, or add a plug for them and their awards.
I propose an item under administrative matters that it's now been a couple of months since I received this email from the mayor asking that if our terms are ended, that we be reappointed, fill out a new application and stuff. And my first question is, whose terms have ended and how do we go with this?
So I haven't had a chance to talk to the mayor about that. I'm not sure why members of the commission received it. I thought that ended only for the advisory commissions. So I will follow up with the mayor and find out about, the commission's requirements.
I clicked through the links when that originally came out and there was no like the email came to us, but when I clicked through the links, we were not one of the groups listed, so I didn't do anything.
Yes,
And I'm supposed to do something. I also want to know if my term's expired.
it has actually, yes. So I will look into that.
Actually, might expire me anyway.
Well, for legal reasons, you are allowed to continue until you're replaced. So under municipal law. So
You replace or you resign.
yes, you could just keep going. For the active public listening and thinking about these things.
So any other comments? If not, we can adjourn.
I just wondered if we knew of what's next on our docket, or do we have projects coming back or?
We do, so 407 North Aurora Street, I met with the property owner and contractor today to talk about the window and door replacement project. They will be coming back in July. I met with, or have been in communication with the First Presbyterian Church. They do plan on returning to the commission next month with revised materials or revised design. And then there are always, there are other projects that are still in development that we may see applications for in the next month or two.
Thank you.
One more item on this proposal to place a moratorium on the creation of expansion of historic districts. Is anything?
Yeah, any development there?
On there?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize my picture was in the paper.
Famous.
Interesting. Yes, Clyde's proposal is still something that the council would like to discuss. Clyde has been tasked with, or Alderperson Letterman has been tasked with collecting questions from other common council members, sharing those with staff so that staff has the opportunity to prepare a response or provide the data that the commission, the common council is looking for before they vote on the proposed moratorium or change in legislation. It has not left committee, no. Yes.
Okay. Can we have a motion to adjourn? Susan. Janet.
Body language. All in favor?
Oh, all in favor, yes, yes. Thank you.
One moment. First thing I'm gonna do is end the, stop.
Okay.
All right.